even sensitive material forward.
And to that point, and you also were the director and producer of a Zodiac Killer, a docuseries on Netflix, and that had really sensitive conversations too. And I think you did a really good job of honoring a victim's story and getting and helping them come forward in a way that perhaps felt safe to them. And as we know, true crime is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But on the flip side, this is real life. This is someone's darkest day. This is a real life family tragedy. So, how do you tell those stories honestly and without exploiting the victim or this tragedy? A, and B, overall, what do you think of the true crime industry?
True crime industry. I mean, I guess it has become an industry. It's interesting because the people making the shows, speaking just for sort of my genre, like you were probably right. There probably are multi-billion dollars somewhere, but I don't know where and who's getting them. But I trust you, and I think you're probably right. I think probably on the scripted side of things, I think there's probably a lot more money being made because of the business model associated with the scripted shows. Whereas with non-scripted, typically we're really work for hire, even though we create the IP. We ultimately really give it over when we do tell these stories. So I think, look, I think it's a double-edged sword. I think you're always walking a very thin line, right? It's easy to find yourself in a position where you're sitting up at night going, "Am I exploiting people?" Because on the one hand, you really are sort of chasing stories for entertainment value, because we all know if the show doesn't hold the audience's attention, or if it doesn't have enough meat on that bone, it falls flat. I'm not really interested in telling stories that nobody sees. But on the other hand, those stories are also the ones where they need just as much help as the others. So, look, in the years I've been doing this, more times than not, I have seen actual progress get made on these shows, in these stories, to these families, to victims, because of the exposure of those stories. And that's always what I say to people. I'm like, look, I'm not suggesting this is going to be fun. Nobody wants to rehash the past. But when people are really motivated to get answers, I really do think this is their best bet. When law enforcement has hit a wall and things have fallen flat, this is definitely the best approach. So I take solace in that. With Zodiac, it's a really good comp in the sense that we spent a lot of time getting to know these people, sitting with them, making them feel comfortable, and also trying to make sure that they understood that hopefully there was a catharsis there, and hopefully there's an opportunity to, I think in their case, really have some closure. I think, because the lead suspect in the Zodiac is dead and was dead when we did the series, I think there's a little bit of a different stakes there. And I think there is an opportunity for closure for this family. Whereas with the Bradleys, I don't think closure is a word that really is as relevant.
And does your perspective shift at all from start of the project to finish? Because I know you were familiar with the case, but there are some theories as to what happened to Amy Bradley, some of them being it was an accident and she fell overboard, another being she was murdered and her body was thrown overboard, and perhaps arguably the most popular is that she was kidnapped, taken off the boat, and then sold into sex trafficking. So do you go in with an open mind and a blank slate and you go where the evidence leads? Or do you go in kind of with a notion of, hey, I kind of think this is what happened here? And when you talked with the family, with eyewitnesses, with key witnesses, people like that, when you look at all the evidence, does that validate your theory? Or instead, does that blow it up and you completely changed course?
Yeah, the audience is really smart, and I think different producers, different directors will have different opinions about this. I really value the true crime audience. Much as saying that, I think they're really smart, and I think they're really good at calling bullshit, and they're really good at dissecting details. So the reason I say that is, when approaching a story like this, it was really important that we only took this on if we felt like the theories that were being put out there were credible. And not just credible, but credible in comparison to the others. So I think what makes this particularly different is we are the audience in a sense. And when I say we, I mean the people making the show, me and my team. And we're going into this going, okay, we may have our personal opinions about what we think happened, what we hope happened, you know, all sorts of subjective ideas. But at the end of the day, we want to convince ourselves that all of these theories are possible. And the way we do that is we go down each road and we say, does this pass my BS meter? Does this, when we look these people in the eye, are we convinced that this was possible? Do we think this eyewitness is telling the truth? Do we think that, that Amy's mindset maybe wasn't what it could have been? Do we think that she was struggling? Do we think, right? Like, and everybody's going to have a different opinion about that. But our job is to say, hey, look at this. This could have happened. We're going to give you enough context information to suggest that a logical person at home who's smart could see a world in which that happened. And they could also see a world in which this other thing happened. And so you start playing that game in your mind of, oh, okay, there are layers to this. And sure, it's a rabbit hole, but it's not a rabbit hole that's a conspiracy. And it's not a rabbit hole that doesn't have legs, right? These are things that feel like they can stand on their own 2 feet to a logical, sensible person. And that's kind of the bar, that we set.
And why do you think that the true crime audience is just so passionate? Because if you talk about any big case in American culture, people have their theories and their opinions on what exactly happened there. Even in your Zodiac docuseries, at the end, one of the cops hired someone who knew more about the case than they did just by researching it and just being an active person who wanted to learn more about the case. What do you think about this audience makes them so passionate? And do you think that they misunderstand anything?
Yeah. I think they're passionate about it because it matters. I think that, look, you can be passionate about lots of things. You can be passionate about, football cards, right? But like here, I think we can all agree that the stakes are very, very high. And the reason why I'm sitting here spending time on these stories, and I'm not going to sit here and say, I want to like solve the world's problems, but in a small way, I think it's like we've all been doing this a long time. Yes, we love to tell stories. Yes, we're obsessed with character and we think it's super interesting. And we like to learn and all these things. But at the end of the day, again, we can change something here. We really genuinely can. And I've seen it happen. And I believe it can happen again. And the true crime audience understands that. They understand that there's almost this like weird group effort here. I mean, I go on Reddit and I actually read what people say and I take it seriously, because real information comes out of those places. It doesn't mean it's always true. It doesn't mean it's always right. It doesn't mean it always pans out. But they're passionate because they can do something and they feel empowered. And they feel empowered that they can actually make a difference and change somebody's life and change the truth as we've seen it. So that's pretty powerful.